Not only do we use it, we make it. We recharge our everyday life with it. Therefore, we expect more from it than ever. We want it to be green and trustworthy, powerful yet safe. Our task is not only to make sure it works, but to make sure every day it works better, smarter, more conveniently. Ignitus, an international energy group, making the world energy smart.
Tai, ką pasaulis darė paskutinį šimtmetį su naftos produktais, juos degindamas, tai yra visiškai nedovanotina. Jaunystėje buvau vienas iš žalių judėjimo pradininkų ir po to, kai taip susiklostė aplinkybės ir pradėjau savo verslą, tai visi sprendimai verslo ir paieškos buvo surasti naudą gamtai yra be abejo ekonominė logika.
Dancer išskirtinumas yra lengvumas. Lengvumą mes pasiekėme naudodami kompozitinės medžiagas. Šis autobusas sveria 2 kartus mažiau nei tie autobusai, kurie važinėja gatvėse, varomi konvenciniu kuru. Dvigubai lengvesnis autobusas leidžia mums pasiekti dvigubai mažesnės energijos vartojamos sąnaudas. Taigi miestas šiuo atveju laimi tikrai labai daug, gatvėse mažiau provėžų, sunaudojama mažiau energijos, sutaupoma daugiau pinigų.
Dancer monitoringo sistema, kuri leidžia stebėti autobuso parametrus nuotoliniu būdu. Panašiai kaip lėktuvo juodoji dėžė, jinai įrašo visus duomenis ir leidžia anksčiau laiko nustatyti galimus gedimus.
Autobuse yra įdiegta greito krovimo sistema, baterija pasikrauna per 6 minutes. Būtent per tą laiką, kol autobusas kraunasi, vairuotojas spės atsigerti kavos, pailsėti, kol pasiruoš sekančiam maršrutui.
Dancer and Dancer Leasing developed a concept, we call it the Don't Worry package, where we take care of the financing and the leasing of the buses. We take care of the maintenance of the buses, plus we are 100% CO2 free because the buses which are produced here in Klaipėda in our enterprise, these buses will be supplied by Dancer Leasing with 100% clean CO2 neutral energy.
Mūsų autobusas, mūsų siūlymas visuomeniai, tai yra šokis. Tai yra gaivus oras. Tai yra nedidelės sąnaudos, skaitykim. Tai yra grįžimas atgal į viešąjį transportą. Tai yra daug. Ir tai yra nuostabus šokis.
Renewable energies will lead to a change that will have a huge impact on our future. What might look simple on the outside is only possible with a reliable and secure power grid. The energy transition makes grid planning and operation increasingly complex, and Velio supports grid operators to meet this challenge. The Intelligent Grid Platform is a software assistance system that digitizes technical grid planning and operation processes. It provides multiple applications in 3 main areas. In the area of data quality, a complete digital twin of the entire grid is developed. With this model, typical grid planning processes can be automated, such as connection impact analyses for new generators or consumers. In the area of grid operation, be completed in minutes. Renewable generators and charging points for electric vehicles can be integrated faster and with less costs. This does not only benefit the climate, but also our society, as the energy transition remains affordable. Envelio, digital transformation of electricity grids.
Wait, what, sorry?
Vilnius.
Vilnius.
It's,
Vilnius.
Which one?
Vilnius. It's Austria.
Welcome to Vilnius, Austria, the undiscovered jewel of the Alps. Vilnius is characterized by having most of its landmarks just a few minutes away from each other by foot. This admirable city is in the heart of Austria.
Vilnius? In Italy?
In the heart of Italy, being its most well-kept secret. Its effervescent streets and colorful markets make it a perfect destination for any traveler. For obvious reasons, Vilnius is the pride of Italy. I mean, the pride of Finland. Vilnius's old town, considered one of the biggest in the region, is crowned by the majestic Gedimino Tower, where travelers like this young fellow, hello there, buddy, can have the same view that the old ruler of Finland, the old ruler of Venezuela.
Sweden?
I mean, Sweden.
Belgium.
Oh, okay.
Ethiopia.
Of Ethiopia?
Romania.
What if I told you that Vilnius is the capital of Lithuania?
would never know.
Yeah? There you go. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes!
Welcome to Vilnius, Lithuania.
The Netherlands is a small but resilient country. We have always been at the forefront of innovation. When faced with a challenge, we take it on to find answers and solutions that make the world a better place. From protecting ourselves against the seas to pioneering technologies such as Wi-Fi.
Over the last 10-15 years, we have produced remarkably successful companies within Europe, but even on a global level, it's quite exceptional. And if you then subsequently look at what's going on in Holland right now, I believe the future looks very bright for our country, so a lot to be proud of.
Technology may be the key to the future, but it's the people with great ideas that hold the key in their hands. The bright minds, the innovators, and the change makers. These people deserve our support to rise to today's challenges. We need to empower Dutch leaders and provide them with an ecosystem for innovation to ensure the Netherlands stays an innovation leader with a competitive and relevant economy in this rapidly changing world.
The Netherlands might look like a small country, but it's very important that we stay ahead of these developments and instead of be the follower.
The entrepreneurial spirit that we find in the can-do attitude, the level of ambition in Holland is something I haven't seen in many other countries in Europe. So I think it's time to act, and it's time to act now.
We are TechLeap. We empower Dutch leaders with support when it comes to access to capital, talent, markets, and technology. We bridge the gap between where they are and where they want to be.
I really believe that TechLeap can make a difference, and that's the reason also why myself and some of my colleagues have decided to spend some of our time really bring our experience to help some companies and some startups scale up in Holland and having the global impact that we've had with our own companies.
Together with the ecosystem, we help people with great ideas to reach their maximum potential in the world of today and in the world of tomorrow. TechLeap, empowering Dutch leaders in tech.
Hello and welcome back to the Energy Tech Summit 2020. I hope you had a great break because we did, and you are now ready to get back to some more quality content. And speaking of which, we are now starting to get ready for probably one of the most exciting parts of the hydrogen segment. So those are going to be the live pitches for new challenger in the energy. So basically what we have done, we have lined up for you top 5 pitches from the most promising companies in the hydrogen segment. And not only will you be able to vote your favorite, meaning audience's favorite, but also we are going to have the judges joining the studio and doing the Q&A session. So stay tuned for that. And without any further ado, I would like to ask to join into our virtual studio some of the jury members. So including me. Also, we'll be joined by Amit Srivastava, who is the senior partner at Cycle Capital Management, as well as we'll be joined by Antoine Delaforgue, who is the managing director and a chief technology officer at the Total Carbon Neutrality Ventures. And last but not the last, we'll be joined by Event Egeland Olsen, who is the chief investment officer at Nysnow Climate Investments. Hello, guys, and welcome on board. How are you feeling? Great. Do you hear me well?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Cool. Awesome. So everything seems to be working. That's great. So, a couple of technicalities before we begin, as usual. Probably the audience knows this by heart already, but just for you guys and for the sake of being on the same page, we are going to have 5 pitches. So each pitch has about 5 minutes for their time, for their presentation, and then we're going to move on to the Q&A session to you guys. And that's also going to be five more minutes. So basically, for one startup, around 10 minutes. And I think with that said, we are ready to move on. And so first up, we have lined a startup called Divigas. And Divigas will be represented by their founder and CEO straight from Singapore, Andre Lorenzo. Andre, are you with us? Yes, you are, looking fabulous.
Yeah, I am.
And ready to pitch, right? So go ahead, your time starts now.
Sure, you see my screen? Yeah, you got it. Okay, cool. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. So, we are Divigas, and we are a next generation hydrogen separation membrane. So basically, today in the petrochemical sector, there's about $110 billion worth of hydrogen being made every year, and about 15% of that, so that is wasted. So that hydrogen is made for refineries, for ammonia plants, for fertilizers, and for a ton of other petrochemical products. 15% of that, when it gets used, it gets inefficiently used, and it exits through a side stream, which is called a purge gas stream. And there's some hydrogen membranes that exist. A membrane is basically a filter. And some of the companies you have at the bottom there are the companies that do that today, but overwhelmingly a major part, billions of dollars worth of hydrogen every year is not recycled or recovered because it's considered to be too expensive, because the gases are too hot, there's too much pressure, or there's too many acidic contaminants. Cue us, essentially. My co-founder, Dr. Ali Naderi from NUS here in Singapore, invented this membrane, which is much more robust. So it can take much more acidic condition, pretty much the most extreme you can imagine, as well as over 150 degrees Celsius, whereas most membrane can take up to 70 maximum typically. That means that we can now not only have a higher efficiency, but also target much tougher streams. So I'm not going to go into all the details. We unfortunately don't have the time for that. But basically, more robustness, better filtration, and it eliminates a number of problems such as fouling, which is a classic sort of clogging up of membrane filters. So we apply to the classic hydrogen membrane industry or hydrogen recovery industry, of which there's probably anywhere between $1 to $3 billion a year spent on that today. And we are hyper competitive in that space. We last longer. We have better efficiency per unit. But really what we're excited about is actually new use cases. So places where they're not recycling the gas at all because it is considered to be, too acidic, too many contaminants. By the way, often contaminants, we're talking about CO2, which is very considered to be a very acidic gas, or hydrogen sulfides, or there's too much heat in the stream. So these use cases, some of them are refineries, other petrochemical plants. Some of them are very small markets, like benzene polishing is a very niche market, versus others are massive expansion of the markets, such as diesel, hydrocracker, and treaters, which are at refineries for any kind of a crude oil, diesel, or standard refining process. So we have 3 LOIs. We're actually the commercialization point right now. We're working on pilots actually starting 2 days from now. These pilots are going to take about a month and a half, and we expect them to go very well because we've already tested it like crazy. But basically, 2 months from now, our clients should or about a month from now, our clients should be like, okay, let's move on to the full-scale, real on-site sort of first major deployment. One of them is in Austria, the second one is in China, and the third one is in North America. So we're spread out all over the place, 3 different use cases. And as you can see, we're talking about for every dollar spent, we're talking about $3, $2 to $3 saved, but on streams that are worth several millions of dollars. So I'm a repeat founder. This is actually my third startup. I've raised $15 million in the past. I had a team of 60 people in a software startup in New York. And my co-founder actually invented the entire technology. He has been working in the polymer industry for over 10 years. He's invented everything from more heat shielding for the space shuttle to car crumping polymers. And now he spent the last 5 years essentially working on this technology to make better hydrogen separation membranes. I should say not just the materials, he's made the materials, the manufacturing process, and the polymer modification after the manufacturing process. That's really where the technology is. So right now we're raising a seed round for $2 million, which is going also very, very well. I expect to close or at least get the term sheet next couple of weeks. Lots of people are interested. We're at technology readiness level around 6, moving on 7 after those pilots. And we're very eager to ship by end of 2021. Full-scale product on-site with clients. So yeah, that's us. That's DiviGas. We're based in Singapore with a very international footprint. Thank you.
Thank you. The judges, the floor is yours.
Maybe I can start. Thanks for a very interesting presentation. You briefly touched upon not targeting existing applications, but you were more excited about the new markets that aren't doing this already. Could you just explain a bit more about the competitive dynamics in sort of existing applications and why you're not targeting that?
It's kind of so we are competitive in those classic applications, as in we definitely can claim, and I'll be able to back it up very soon, that we have better efficiency, better price efficiency. We are very competitive in that space. But it's kind of like when I'm approaching clients, all of our competitors have been around for 20, 30 years. They've been doing this for a very long time. Their product has been the same for basically 20 years. It's evolved very slowly. But so I'm kind of coming in, when I come into a stream where they're already doing filtration, they're kind of like, they know this product, they know this brand, they know they've been doing this forever. Whereas if I come to a new use case as a startup, I have a sort of like deficit of credibility. So it's much easier for me to show up to a stream and say, today you're doing nothing with this. You're just burning it, you're just releasing it. And to convince them to do these sort of like first deployments when there's no other possible alternative. There's no brand competition in that space because they know that nobody else can do this right now. So if I say I can, it's not me versus everybody, it's me versus that stream. Versus the classic use case, it's me versus everybody versus that stream, which is in reality not that different, but in sales and sort of convincing client, it's actually very different.
Got it. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. I had a question. Are you selling the membranes only or the whole stack and piping around it? And what's kind of the ratio between the membrane cost and the whole system cost? Just to get our head around that.
Yeah, I actually usually mention it, as you're totally right. I didn't. We keep the membrane manufacturing in-house. We sell the whole system. So we're going to work with external partners that make membrane. We already have our supply chain mostly figured out. We have our own module design, the encasing design, and we're going to work with external partners for the whole skid mountain delivering and everything else. In terms of cost of, there's a lot of elasticity there in terms of the cost of the whole system based on shipping, where it is, etc. But I'm going to roughly say the membrane costs about 50% of the entire, maybe a little bit more than the entire system. But it's a very contextual answer.
Thank you. So a little bit on your financials, assuming hypothetically that you are only constrained to be in the new use cases domain, that you're not able to go and beat the incumbents in other places, what kind of revenue projections would you see the company delivering in the next few years?
I mean, so we have these 3 use cases right now, all of which are worth essentially a few million ARR per year, but some of which are very, very big. So we have a diesel hydrotreater off-gas train that is an extremely toxic acidic one. And if we validate that use case with the major refiner, it's one of the sort of like major refiners in the world, $100 billion company. If we validate that use case for a hydrotreater off gas with them, there's really very little reason. Like, this is the most acidic stream, and it could unlock that specific use case as a sub market could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The total sort of like, we extrapolated the size of this specific stream we're doing right now, compared it to the entire sort of like diesel manufacturing world. And if every hydrotreater off-gas stream had the same parameters, that would represent $2.5 billion in sales for us. Now, obviously, in the next few years, I have no idea of the sort of like how fast I can scale this, etc. But there is multiple use cases have massive output. Some of them are also hard to size up. So power to gas is potentially a very interesting one for us. And power to gas is storage of hydrogen, green hydrogen underground. Very sort of like potential growth market there, but very hard to say how big that market's going to be. Flip side, coal to liquid, a major area for expansion. China is already spending, is basically like doubling or tripling their capacity almost every year. And they, we could potentially be very good for there, because there's a lot of contamination in the coal to liquid process that we know they're not separating, but how much, very difficult to say. What I can safely say is that I have. Yeah, please.
You're addressing the size of the market, that it can be a big one. I guess it also, how well you do depends on how fast even a customer who likes you, how rapidly they're ready to, deploy it in their domain, or even where for the very first one, does it take 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years before they are happy with how it's working, before they decide to go beyond that?
Yeah.
Andre, please take this really quick.
Yeah. I mean, look, I can give you a qualitative answer. The point is, we're trying to do it as fast as I can. My specialty is in going super fast, so that's the best I can give you. But we do have a sort of like financial strategy that's like aimed at sort of like very aggressive growth, and replicating the manufacturing process based on client need is not a limitation. It's something that's been done a lot, that we should be able to replicate very rapidly. And deliveries can happen in as fast as 6 months. So, depending on volume of sales, depends how much people pick up on it very fast.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we are now moving to our second startup of the day. So it will be represented by Christopher Brandon, who is the co-founder of EH Group Fuel Cell Stack. Brandon, are you with us?
Indeed.
Hi. Okay, so your time starts now.
So, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for having me. I'm Chris Brandon, co-founder of EH Group, based here in sunny Switzerland. So the 2000s were about solar and wind. The 2010s were all about lithium ion, and the 2020s is the beginning of the so-called hydrogen era, and is going to be about fuel cells. However, there still remains the issue of cost and complexity, which is major challenges to its deployment. And these are the two issues we're trying to solve. What we've done is we've redesigned at the microstructure level what actually happens within our fuel cell stack. And the net result is a much more compact, lightweight, stack, which has about 1.5 times the power density of that of our competitors. Now, because of our unique redesign at the cell level, we are able to manufacture them in a wholly different way, which eliminates a lot of the numerous steps which have prevented widespread scale production of fuel cell stacks. And more importantly, drives down the costs from 800,000 euros a kilowatt to below 100 euros per kilowatt at scale. Finally, our cell pitch on our stacks is so low that actually it has minimal effects of gravity and hence is particularly well suited for mobile applications. And we've been working with the European Space Agency based on that. We also designed the fuel cell system around it. And again, linked to our design is the fact that actually we're able to eliminate or simplify a lot of the auxiliary components, such as compressors or humidifiers, which means less costs, less parasitic loads, and higher efficiencies on the whole system. On patent strategy, we filed 5 patents. We have a further 5 in the works. It covers the full spectrum of the core stack technology, as well as a production process associated with it. Team of 8, soon to be 10, and due to be 20 or 25 by this time next year. The background is primarily in engineering, energy systems, fuel cells, of course, and hydrogen production. We also work quite closely with some of the universities, EPFL here in Switzerland and UCL and Imperial College in London. We're currently in various stages of pilot project deployment, COVID aside, so the one with the European Space Agency, a stationary application, and a microgrid project here in Switzerland as well. And then several range extenders on small electric vehicles in Holland, in France, and also one just recently in Croatia. Fuel cells is it's a growing market, but it's just currently still it's a 1 gigawatt deployment of last year, but we're looking at 2 to 3 gigawatts deployed this year, boosted obviously by the very strong policy support, EU, Germany, France, following on the very strong support in Japan, South Korea, and China that we know. In terms of the other players, there's actually a small group of them, and admittedly they do have longevity, and their stacks are getting better and they are getting cheaper, but these are incremental improvements, while we believe ours is actually a proper breakthrough. In particular, the markets beyond the stationary ones, which are interesting, but if we look at on the mobility side, it's again, the well-known areas of commercial where you need payload, you need range or extensive use, and these are really the big culprits in terms of CO2 production in transport. So anything from forklifts, buses, trucks, diesel train replacements, maritime, etc. Our model is very much B2B. So we're stack supplier to our clients, but what we thought would be a second phase, actually to becoming much more of a first phase, is actually sort of working much closer hand in hand with our potential clients in designing and customizing stacks and systems for their particular applications so that they're all more optimized for them. And really the key here is also to drive the cost down so that you start below, target below 100 euros per kilowatt, so that you start making more rational decisions between fuel cells and lithium-ion batteries based on your technology needs and the application rather than just on price alone. We've been given some support by the EU earlier this year, and we're proud to be an efficient solution of the Solar Impulse Foundation. Where we are, early stages of commercialization, very early stages of commercialization, but we're currently negotiating some framework contracts with some larger potential clients, which are looking promising. We've raised about 3 million euros in seed and other grant money, and we'll be doing a Series A in the first half of next year to ramp up our production, complete the production machinery, and get to full commercialization. I will end on saying that despite all this sort of hydrogen hype at the moment, this is a long-term play. This is not a 3 to 5 year play. We're looking for partners who are willing to play the long game and be on this for full deployment and all the cycles involved till we finally eliminate the diesel engine. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. So now we are moving to the Q&A session.
I had a technical question. What's the maximum size stack you tested already, and what's your target kind of key product size in terms of kilowatts?
So we currently have 3 platforms that go from 1 to 100 kilowatts. And obviously these are modular, so the 100 kilowatts, you can put them side by side in a system. However, we are actually developing a much larger stack platform based on specific requests from a few clients, which actually goes just beyond 250 kilowatts. And that we see as a very interesting product for heavy-duty transport, trucks, trains, as well as large-scale stationary applications. I mean, the stack itself should probably be developed early next year, and the full system, will take probably till this time next year.
I guess a question following up on that. I didn't get a chance to extensively review all the pilot projects, but it seemed to be a fairly wide range there of different types of applications. Which one of those are you sort of most excited about and fits your technology the best?
I'm excited about all of them. So if we go through, I mean, the purpose of our pilot projects is really is twofold, is to demonstrate that they can operate in a range of environments and various applications, and obviously provides us with a lot of value in terms of the feedback of actually, well, it was cold and it was moving and it was rattling and so on. So our first one that came up was with the European Space Agency. And so whilst it's never going to go to space, although there are plans for someone else's stack to eventually end up on the moon, apparently. Quite seriously, this is for like long-term lunar survival. That's the project. It's for the 14 days of the lunar night, how you're going to power our stations up there. So that's pretty cool. But the other cool side is we have access to all the labs of the European Space Agency ecosystem. So we've been able to test, or we are testing our stacks at like minus 50 degrees Celsius, 14 G vibrations, which is way beyond what you need for the automotive industry. So that in particular has been quite a sort of fun thing to be involved in. I mean, to be perfectly honest, any sort of vehicle or thing that has our stack on it, I get pretty excited about. There's not that many out there at the moment, in general.
Yeah. Thanks.
Are you going to be working more with end customers or sort of partners along the way, people who already have a strong... I'm talking more about the conventional markets, as you talked about maritime and forklifts and so on. I mean, there's people out there already selling stuff out there. And will you need them to go in and either replace what they're using or coexist with it, strike business deals with the distribution channel? Or you think there'll be enough demand from the end customer that they will force everybody to throw whatever other stuff and put in yours?
So who our clients are the forklift makers. So forklift is a great example because we have a potential sizable European client who is a forklift maker. So the conversation starts off with, well, they make electric forklifts and they make diesel ones. And the market is pushing them towards fuel cell-based forklifts because your payback time on a forklift now is versus an electric one is less than a year. And if you're operating a massive warehouse, you obviously can't use a diesel one. And it's based on the amount of space you save in your warehouse and being able to use it just way more time. And you don't get any sort of power drop towards the end. So our conversation with them began with, okay, well, they already have some fuel cell expertise, but that's not really where they, on the system side, but that's not really where their expertise on forklifts and on drivetrains and even on electrified drivetrains. And initially they just wanted a stack. And then that conversation became very rapidly onto, well, why don't we design a stack that's particularly well suited to your forklifts, because that's a market also where quite specifically it has 10 G vibrations because there's no shock absorbers in forklifts. And why don't we, while we're at it, design a system that's going to fit quite neatly in your forklift? And obviously then they take on the integration into their electric drivetrain and do all the access the final customer that side.
Thank you so much, Christopher, for your insights. So we are now moving to our third startup, Ionomr, who are enabling materials for the hydrogen economy. Well, that was tough. So Ionomr will be represented by Benjamin Britton, who is the Chief Strategy Officer for the company, straight from Canada.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ben Britton. I'm one of the founders and Chief Strategy Officer of Ionomr. And we're based here in Vancouver, Canada, bringing revolutionary advanced ion exchange materials to market, really the first step change in this material set in over 50 years. Now, ion exchange materials are the heart and lungs of electrochemical systems, and their performance really dictates the lead resistances and lifetime limitations in electrochemical systems. We bring to market the first viable replacement for Nafion, which is the incumbent fluorinated system, which represents a long-term toxic burden in the world if this material is scaled into the hydrogen economy. We also enable cost-effective systems by having the first alkaline anion exchange materials, which unlock a host of cost-effective systems into this space. We are supported, we're 3 years old as a company and supported by more than 10 years of development pre-commercialization here at the heart of fuel cell systems in Vancouver. We have a broad blocking patent family, which really covers the composition of matter for these polymers that we produce. These are platform technologies, but where they really have a major impact is in the hydrogen ecosystem, enabling low-cost hydrogen production, long-lived and highly efficient fuel cell vehicles, and representing the first stable platform to CO2 to value systems for carbon-negative plastics and fuels through CO2 electrolysis. And these are game-changing technologies. Our joint development partner, Nouryon, who has a 4 gigawatt commitment by 2030, a 10% European green chemical supplier of hydrogen, took a look at our system and, based on a conservative take, saw a more than 50% reduction in the stack capex, representing over $1 billion in cost savings for this deployment. The hydrogen story gets better by the day, and we really come in at the heart of these key technologies. The total available market is around $1 billion in these market verticals today, but that increases to $23 billion by 2035. And these numbers are even oversubscribed based on recent commitments by all across Europe, North Asia, and China. And really, I wanted to highlight that the time to replace perfluorinated materials is now. 2 of the precursors to these materials were put on the Stockholm Persistent Organic Pollutant List last year. And the Nordic Council estimates that in Europe, more than 50 billion euros in health effects are caused, and North Asia and North America are even more polluted. These materials are dangerous not only when put into the water, where they're dangerous down to 1 part per trillion, that's a tablespoon in 10 Olympic swimming pools, but they also represent incredibly forcing forever GHGs if they are incinerated, which is the other way of recovering precious metals out of these systems. So ion exchange materials are selective filters for positive and negative ions, and their properties cannot be stressed enough. These electrochemical systems for producing or using hydrogen effectively or reducing carbon dioxide operate at more than 100 times the current density of batteries. And so these materials representing the lead resistance really drive properties. Our anion exchange materials have a unique design that unlocked indefinite alkaline stability. Other demonstrations in this space have mitigated degradation methods. We prevent them. Our proton exchange materials are a 2 order of magnitude increase in durability versus incumbent hydrocarbon materials, and more than an order of magnitude still against Nafion, which is the magic material, the fluorinated material. By putting Pemion in a fuel cell system, there is immediate benefits in terms of lower gas crossover, which ultimately drives longer life and far lower cost overall system lifetime costs. We also unlock AEM water electrolysis, and a partner has recently demonstrated more than 9 amps per square centimeter at 2.2 volts. That's 11 to 16x greater current density than traditional alkaline systems. This is a breakthrough that unlocks less than 50 cent per kilogram capex for hydrogen systems. We're likewise a game changer for fuel cell technology, both current generation, but also driving the next generation of AEM fuel cells, which have a much simplified balance of plant. We have the team to bring this to the world. Not only do we have device and polymer experts, but our CEO, our vice president of operations, and our board chair were the team that scaled Wi-Fi radios for the world based on the same type of supplier relationships. We're an asset-light company, and the same type of reference designs. We've, on the basis of just over a year of sampling these materials to industrial OEMs, have received significant recognition from many world bodies and activities with over 40 Tier 1 and Tier 2 OEMs globally. Right now, we're in the middle of a Series A, raising 10 to 20 million, and we're near the end of that raise. We've got more than 12.5 million Canadian to the company to date. And this is really to get to the next scale and to drive these reference design and business development teams. So thank you very much for your time and attention, and looking forward to your questions.
Yes, indeed. Let's move to the questions.
How long have you been trying to raise capital, and have you had any difficulties in convincing people?
So as I mentioned, we've raised just over $10 million to date. That is split, say 2/3 from investors and 1/3 from government. And we've received significant traction. In fact, we have a term sheet on the table right now and expecting a competitive one any day. So we have received quite a lot of traction from investors on 3 continents.
And how much capital do you think the company will need before you can reach profitability or sustainability? I mean, just to give a sense of the capital intensity of what you need.
Absolutely. So our target is to achieve over $100 million in by the end of 2025, 2026, which will get us to break even early 2025 is the target. And there's significant upside on that, but we take a realistic trajectory in our revenue growth. These are design-ins. We do small pilots right now. We have the capability of supplying large pilots and full installations, but that is 24 to 48 month design cycle, depending on the market vertical.
Okay. Is your membrane like drop-in in fuel cell systems or electrolyzers, or you need a lot of redesign of the stacks around your membrane?
So it's a redesign of the stack, but not the balance of plant. To be honest, we've tested with traditional systems that are designed for Nafion, and we do achieve incredible performance, more than, in fact, double the power density that has been achieved in academic literature using a fully hydrocarbon system. That said, there's no such thing as a drop-in replacement for a membrane. It is always a design-in and qualification process. It's not a substantial redesign. It doesn't go off-piste in terms of all of the things that we know about how to design a good fuel cell system, but it is an intensive process.
And maybe following up on that question, it seems like your technology, or obviously it has a big market potential, and like you said, there's no drop-in components here. So how does that affect your strategy? What types of verticals and partners are you working most closely with now?
Really, it's the 3 that I mentioned. It's major OEMs making stacks into hydrogen fuel cells, especially for heavy duty, is really where we're focusing, because that's where our advantages of extra long lifetime and we mitigate some of the catalyst degradation, which is really a major impact. We also have an immediate efficiency gain in terms of hydrogen loss in these systems. And again, that is most keenly felt in fleets. In electrolysis, we're working with both the alkaline and the PEM side, taking 2 different design methodologies to pull AEM electrolysis into the world, as well as supporting existing PEM technologies. And in carbon electroreduction, we're really the first stable platform that people are building these systems on. A major German OEM achieved a 3x in system throughput, so current density at an equal efficiency, and that was a game changer for their system economics. So in that market, many of the advances that are necessary for CO2 electroreduction are the same as for electrolysis. So it's really, we're focusing our PEM products mainly in the fuel cell space, our AEM products mainly in electrolysis. So it is quite focused. We have had a lot of traction in sensors and batteries and other things, but we're really have honed down as a company in the last year.
Thanks. I guess one more from me then. How well does the pollution argument you touched upon, how well does that resonate with potential partners and clients now?
You know, this was part of our story for a long time, and it had very little resonance until the last year when the Stockholm persistent organic pollutant list came out with two of the major precursors to Nafion on it. And at that point, there was significant pull through sort of through the OEMs from end users who are looking at their whole supply chains. And that's the sort of traction we see, and it's most keenly felt in Europe. In North America and Asia, I don't believe there's much of a story there to date, but the awareness is growing. In fact, the movie Dark Waters that came out last Christmas was a Hollywood film that really drove a lot of people into looking into the dangers of perfluorinated materials. And I think that has also helped gain some traction there.
Thank you. So we are now moving to our fourth startup, a startup who's coming from Israel called Energy Storage, and it will be represented by their CEO, Asa Ziv. Asa, are you with us?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it and we can hear you well. So please go ahead.
Okay, hi, good afternoon. I'm Asa Ziv, the CEO of the company and co-founder. There is no need to convince you that hydrogen is the fuel of the future, and you know that it's commonly produced, commercially produced, and can be commercially converted back into electricity. The major obstacle is how to store hydrogen. It is commonly accepted that without solving the economically economical way to store hydrogen, hydrogen cannot be too widely used. And the problem with hydrogen, as you know, is that it is gas, and the only mature way today to store hydrogen is by compressing it to a very, very high pressure, which means safety issues and means cost issues, which it is completely unaffordable cost. The solution, which everybody knows it is a solution of the future, is chemistry. And you know that water contains hydrogen, and we know how to extract hydrogen out of water and other compound. And after using hydrogen, we can recharge our system with a compound which is quite like baking soda, with new hydrogen and prepared of use. The major features of this technology is simplicity, safety, and very easy handling. It's just like water, and part of the hydrogen comes from water. Moreover, the condition, the temperature and pressure of making both charge and discharge of hydrogen is very near to room temperature and room pressure. This means that the equipment is also very, very simple, as you can see at the bottom of this slide. This means that our H battery is inexpensive, safe, clean, and energetically efficient. We don't compete in how much hydrogen do you have in 1 liter. We focus on cost. We think that question is how much hydrogen can you store for 2 cents? And the way that we can deal with this question is by energy efficiency. From 1 kilogram of hydrogen, you can extract with a normal fuel cell about 16 or 17 kilowatt hours. In other technology, they need more than 13 kilowatt hours in order to make this process. 13, forgetting 17. We can do it with 2 kilowatt hours, and we know how to reduce it to near zero. Another feature, unique feature, is that our H battery can use the same reactor, same system for charge and discharge. This is especially suitable for solar plants, wind turbines, and it is near ambient temperature and pressure, as I said, thousands of cycles, much more than batteries, ultra low energy consumption, and very environmental friendly. Within about 2 months, we are our first vehicle, small scooter, powered by our technology, will be on the road. Next year, we plan to go into the market of backup systems and renewable energy, follow it with strategic partners. The backup autonomous system can provide very nice solution for cellular antennas backups, for hospitals, for utility control rooms, and the renewable energy storage solution by having hydrogen stored in our system, and from the safety system during nighttime, we can provide hydrogen to fuel cells and get electricity. Professor Yoel Sasson, the left-hand side here, is our CTO. He was the former head of the School of Chemistry in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. He invented this technology, he developed the technology. Asi Shalgi, our chairman, he was the former Director General of the Ministry of Energy of Israel, one of our investors. Myself, with many years in the high-tech industry, development and management positions, a lot of experience. We have a very professional team and very professional subcontractors. We are very strongly, very nicely recognized and supported by the Israeli authorities, governmental authorities, and local, provincial Jerusalem authorities.
Okay, Asa, I'm going to have to cut you there. Your 5 minutes are over. Now we are moving to Jerry.
Thank you for joining us for a better future.
Quick technical question. You mentioned some liquid technologies to store hydrogen need energy to charge and discharge. And I think you mentioned the energy to charge. What about the energy you need to discharge hydrogen out of your battery? Does it need a lot of energy?
No, as I said before, the total cost for storing about 1 kilowatt hour is about a few cents, probably 2 cents. This includes everything, because the temperature that we need, even for the discharge, is about 60 to 70 degrees centigrade. And this can be taken and from this heat, it can be taken from the residual heat of the fuel cell. And indeed, this is what we do in our new scooter. We take the residual heat from the fuel cell in order to heat our reactor, so we don't need any external energy investment.
So the fact that you have already got this deployed in a real-world application like a scooter, does that mean that you have sort of gone through all the various stages of scale up and proof points along the way, making sure that you're getting all your performance. How vetted and tested out is the success of your product?
We aim at, first of all, at the stationary market. The scooter is only for just demonstrations. Yes, you are right. We just finishing the development of the technology. We are quite a new startup, and we made nice upscales. But of course, this is not enough for field units. As I showed before, the next year will be the first demonstration of our field units. It will be probably a few tens of kilowatts, and for backup and for demonstrator the ability for renewable. We know that we have to aim towards the megawatt system, and this will be done within next years.
So if I understand you correctly, the scooter application, that's more for demonstrating the technology. There's no plan, or is there also a plan to make that a commercial product?
It's not a product, it's just a demonstrator.
Okay, and how many
maybe
times?
You can say for marketing purposes.
Yeah, and how many times do you need to scale then for the backup solution you explained, and then again for the ultimate goal?
We should the first upscale will be for a few tens of kilowatts. Once we prove it and test it in the field, and I said it will be next 1 and 2 years. Then the upscale is quite forward. Maybe we should stop at let us say about 200 kilowatt and then to the megawatts.
Okay, thank you.
We still have time for one last question.
Do you have a strategy to partner with large OEMs or early, or you want to move as far as you can without being tied to any of them?
We definitely look for strong strategic partners. We are ready to share the technology, to share the activities, and of course, yes, we are looking for such partners.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So this leads us to our last contestant of New Energy Challengers, and we'll be joined in the studio by Michael Levy, who is the Vice President, Research and Innovation at StorageAge. Michael, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can everybody see my screen? Can everybody hear me and see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm assuming that's okay. All right. I'm Mike Levy. I'm Vice President, Research and Innovation at Accius and also one of the 3 shareholders. Thank you for inviting me to talk about our second round of financing for Storage Technologies, which is a company that we have spun out of Accius to deploy our hydrogen storage standard for green mobility. At Accius, we've been creating low CO2 technology standards for the past 15 years and successfully bringing them into the mobility market to create profitable businesses. We are best known for our 3 global standards in the areas of emissions control. To date, there are about 30 million passenger cars that are on the road with one or more of our standards in the United States, Europe, and Asia. Leveraging on the work that we have done in solid SCR, we have created a new standard for the storage of hydrogen. Our storage cartridges absorb hydrogen in a multi-material, multifunctional matrix at extremely low pressures. We have designed these cartridges to be completely safe for consumers, completely recyclable, and thus safe for the environment, plug and drive, allowing users to quickly replace an empty cartridge for a full one, and of course, universal. That is, they're designed for all light mobility applications. Furthermore, the cartridges use only raw materials and components that not only respect the environment, but also respect ethical production values. And we have a patent portfolio of 155 patents in place to protect our innovation worldwide. The storage technology allows green hydrogen to be stored safely in easy-to-use connected cartridges. These cartridges are distributed in state-of-the-art vending machines and are accessible through a smartphone app, thus eliminating the need for expensive and intrusive infrastructure. Our IT platform and app are designed to enable optimal user experience for B2G, B2B, and B2C customers, allowing them to efficiently manage all of their mobility and energy needs. And in addition to the network of vending machines, our users can recharge their cartridges at home or in the office through the use of the storage home chargers. The IT platform and app allow the storage business model to be easily replicated and scaled up during the rollout of the storage ecosystem worldwide. Our mission is to make green hydrogen available safely and easily anywhere and anytime in a manner that is both economical and respectful of the environment. And over the last 2 years, the storage standard has been vetted on the international level. Storage is one of the solar impulse efficient solutions. On the European level, we were granted Interreg funding to initiate our deployment on the French-Swiss border. In France, the French National Industrial Council officially supports the storage solution and considers it to be a key enabler in structuring the green hydrogen value chain. In France, the Central Purchasing Organization for Public Transportation has included storage in its catalog of mobility solutions that it presents to all of the regions and cities in France. And finally, still on the national level in China, in 2.5 months, we will be presenting, we've been invited by the National Development Reform Commission to present storage at the upcoming China International Import Expo this year in Shanghai. Part of our go-to-market strategy involves designing a powered by storage module that makes it very easy for an electric vehicle manufacturer to migrate from a battery storage solution to our storage cartridge solution. And it works. Storage has been adopted by 12 electric vehicle manufacturers to create a complete catalog of powered by storage light mobility vehicles that you see on this slide. Storage competes directly against the gasoline diesel versions of these vehicles, and there are several key drivers that are pushing gasoline and diesel out of the light mobility market, especially in cities. The battery electric versions are a useful transition towards the more economical, environmentally friendly, user-friendly, powered by storage solution. We go to market first by targeting B2G and B2B customers to initiate the rollout of the storage solution. These key accounts allow us to deploy the cartridge distribution network and create the visibility that is needed to subsequently launch into the B2C market with our OEM partners. And we deploy in countries where there is already a strong drive towards renewable energies and an acceptance of the ecological benefits of green hydrogen. In order to accelerate the worldwide rollout of storage as a green energy mobility standard, storage technologies requires further capital investments, and we are looking for investors who are committed to creating a zero CO2 world and local sustainable development. We have raised 10 million euros in our first round, and we are targeting 20 million by the second quarter of 2021. And this last slide is a snapshot of what our worldwide deployment looks like in the 2025 timeframe. Thank you for your attention, and obviously I'm open for questions.
I'm curious, excuse me, why are you pushing the pitch as that you're a standard maker? When you say a standard, that means a lot of other people are going to use your technology and build similar kind of products and use the standard, as opposed to, okay, you have an innovative product and an innovative business model, and you go out and conquer the world. So why is this focus on standards?
The reason we focus on standards is because this is part of our automotive DNA. A standard is what allows you to have enough volume so that costs can go down. And as has been indicated throughout the Energy Tech Summit, one of the key enablers to massifying and allowing the whole hydrogen value chain to develop is obviously going to be that at each part of the value chain, costs go down. Costs can go down, as with any innovation, as we increase volumes. So in our experience, all of the innovations that we've introduced into the market, it's once they become a standard that we can reach enough volumes so that the cost can go down, and we can go from early adopters to painful pragmatists and eventually to the B2C market. That's why we focus on standards.
I appreciate, understand that.
If you look at the battery electric market today, it's the lack of a standard battery that is a showstopper today. So there are two reasons why we're focusing on standards.
But to become a standard, others have to accept it, rather than you say that I'm the standard alone, right?
Exactly. And what we mean by standard, by other vehicle manufacturers. Today we have a catalog of 12 OEMs. You can't cover the world with 12 OEMs in the light urban mobility market. The light urban mobility market is a market that is highly fragmented, and you need a standard to allow all of these players to basically move to hydrogen. So what we mean by standard is that OEM partners will adopt the powered by storage solution.
Okay.
You mentioned that you see battery vehicles as a transition and your technology as an ultimate goal, which would be cheaper. I'd be curious to understand how your solution can be cheaper compared to if you look at the overall economics, overall cost, including the vehicles, compared to battery swapping solutions, which we already see in China and some countries for light vehicles.
Exactly. We are very familiar with the battery swapping solutions, whether they be in the light mobility market. You have solutions that you look at Gogoro in Taiwan, you look at basically Gogoro copycats in China and here in Europe. They all go on the same model, which is an improvement of what Better Place tried to do and failed to do in the automotive market. When you look at the total cost of ownership and you include things such as the limited lifetime of batteries, that's when on a total cost of ownership basis, you can see that today, in the worst case scenarios, we are at ISO cost. But once again, in total cost of ownership terms.
Are there any more questions? We have still time for one, but a quick one. Okay, let's move and proceed further in this case. So that was our last picture of the session for Top 5 for Hydrogen. So obviously, thank you so much, the judges, for your questions, and as well as the pitching companies. I wish you the best of luck in building your products, finding market fits, raising next rounds, the usual stuff. But we are now ready to move forward. Just a small note, we will have the Hydrogen's winner on Friday at the closing ceremony of the Energy Tech Summit. So stay tuned for results. And now we have come to our last session of today. We are moving on with a panel discussion where our guest speakers will discuss whether the latest hype around hydrogen will finally bring it to scale, or will they take investors' perspective on hydrogen as the ultimate bet to challenge fossil fuels. So on this panel discussion, we'll be joined by already very well-known investors who joined us for the Q&A session. So we're going to ask Antoine Delafargue, Amit Srivastava, and Eivind Ingelen Olsen to come back to the studio. And the panel discussion is going to be moderated by our guest moderator, Alex Irvin Hunt, who is the Global Markets Editor at FDE Magazine. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And as mentioned, I'm Alex Owen Hunt, and I'll be moderating this session all about, is the latest hype in hydrogen going to get us to the scale we need? Is it going to be the real solution to our energy needs going forward, and the ultimate bet to challenge fossil fuels? I suppose, given that you have all been listening in today, I don't need to give too much of a scene setter and context, but I think it's worth noting before we get into our discussion that it's clear the hype around hydrogen has been around for many decades now, but it's definitely picked up in recent years. I mean, we've seen significant political momentum building, and whether that's sort of national strategies being announced across the EU, Australia, Canada, Korea, or multilateral discussions at the G20 and other meetings. And most importantly, we are seeing, as we've seen from some of the startups pitches earlier, some very exciting technologies and startups emerging to find their place in the future of the hydrogen economy. I'd say, I think there's not too much of a need to introduce our panelists, given that they were hosts on previous pitching sessions. But I think it's important to understand that this investor perspective we're getting are from three sort of different standpoints. And as I said, from the corporate side, we've got Antoine, who is, of course, Managing Director and CTO of Total Carbon Neutrality Ventures. Then from the sovereign side, we have Ivan Egeland Olsen, Chief Investment Officer of Newson Climate Investments, of course, Norway's sovereign climate investment company. And last but not least, we have Amit Srivastava, a senior partner at Cycle Capital Management based out of Canada. So thank you all for joining me. I'd like to start with you, Amit, if I may. I think it's important to understand what the latest hype is about. I mean, do you think there's anything different about the current hype around hydrogen that maybe tells us anything about what the future may hold?
Yeah, it's a very broad question, and if I knew the definitive answer, I would be doing something else right this very minute. But I'm more than happy to share my thoughts on it. I think the bottom line answer is nobody knows, and I would say I'm not sure it'll get there, but there's a good chance. And the reason is that these kind of sectors or areas of investment, which then draws in entrepreneurs, that bring in the government, they're trying to solve very fundamentally large problems that we don't have answers to. So anytime there is something new that happens, people rush in that direction. But the good thing is that what can maybe help it succeed this time is that there are newer technologies that are coming, attacking each element of the value chain. Whether it is in the production of hydrogen, and we're seeing some of these examples even in the startups that presented today, as well as those others who didn't make it to the final cut, but there were a large number of startups who this process has gone through, and around the world there are new people coming with new innovations in how to produce hydrogen, how to store it, how to distribute it. And so I think it's sort of like a new renewed assault on the fortress, that, okay, now we got new tools to sharpen and break down the wall, and we have better weapons to solve the problem with. So I think the chances are definitely higher. However, one does recognize that unlike IT and Moore's law in electronics, where there's tremendous exponential kind of improvement in innovation, the innovations and improvements are somewhat more gradual and they take more time. So my sense is that eventually we will get to a successful hydrogen economy. I do not think it's going to be something that is you turn on the switch and it turns from night to day. I think it'll be a long and gradual process. There'll be lots of fits and starts, but there is going to be a place for it. How big and large is the one that remains to be seen, and does it happen in 2 decades, 1 decade, or 3 decades is also something that needs to be happening.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to come to you, Ivan, next. I mean, what's your take? Do you tend to agree that this latest hype, we've got some new tools at our disposal and it's more likely, less likely for the future of hydrogen and its success?
Well, I have to echo Amit there that I think it's very difficult to say. I think the renewed interest has a lot to do with the policy attention, obviously, and looking at the EU and their ambitions through the Green Deal. I think that's driving a lot of the interest. But on some fundamental level as well, if you look at the technologies on the production side, when you have renewable energy at the cost level you have today, obviously that's a better starting point than where you were 1-2 decades ago. And then the other aspect of it is the resurgence of carbon capture.
If we dream big, I think we need to look at cross-border stuff and projects, and in that case, maybe the price can really get down.
So are investors or infrastructure investors missing a trick there? I mean, is there a big opportunity then to invest into hydrogen infrastructure across borders? I mean, what's needed then to really have that big thinking approach in that sense?
Well, maybe oil majors are maybe the good players for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So. I think what we've seen as well is with renewables is the rise of increasingly sophisticated infrastructure investors, and that's good news for renewables. And if those guys can also come in the hydrogen space and also invest in hydrogen infrastructure, fueling stations, pipelines, and whatnot, I think that would be quite a good ingredient in the mix.
Sure. And to come back to you, Amit, I mean, a part of the debate around hydrogen is whether hydrogen fuel cells or batteries will be the key to the electric vehicle revolution. I mean, where do you stand on that? Are you taking Elon Musk's perhaps strong view on batteries versus hydrogen? Where do you stand?
I don't have a strong view on that. I think because these are solving different problems, but as I said, my approach at this stage of the technology evolution is that you cannot pick winners, that there is no reason to need to pick winners. So, obviously in the battery side, there is always somebody who's coming in with absolutely the best next battery. There's new chemistry, there's new stack technologies, there's new, and the demand is clearly there, right? So that's the good part, and especially with the EV sector taking off, you kind of know that if you have the right product, you may have a good home for it. So the challenge is not to think that it's a purist game, that you're going to wipe out the other guys. That's not going to happen. I think the fuel cells obviously have a much broader set of applications. Especially if you're talking about mobility applications. On the battery side, the biggest worry there is, can you scale it up? Can you get it deployed? Can you get the customers to test it out? And can you make sure that you can uproot the incumbents out there? So there's a lot of market-related issues that come up out there. And as we saw with some of the companies that presented, they're taking the smart approach instead of trying to pick those use cases where nobody else can do it at all. And so that is the driving wedge by which. So again, I would not try to pick winners between the two sectors. And I think there will be winning companies as well as winning use cases in both sides.
Sure. Does anyone else have a stronger view of one or the other, or is it unanimous in terms of spreading your bets?
No, I think to add to that, and I think there's also a question of applications which Amit spoke to as well. It's with batteries and the whole EV revolution. It's perhaps not the easiest place to compete. So if we look at where hydrogen can succeed, I guess to compete with cars and the whole EV revolution is probably not the best place to start, where you have a good value proposition in other sectors that have less competition and which are more crucial to decarbonize. So I think in transport, it's areas like heavy duty and maritime applications, which at least I think is more interesting when companies target those, and in the longer term, in industrial applications where there are few alternatives to decarbonize. I think if we go back to where we started, that the carbon neutrality by 2050 is the main driver of this, then I think you're wise as an entrepreneur or investor to target those applications that actually address the pain points in terms of getting there.
Sure. And one of large announcement in relation to hydrogen in recent days was Airbus saying that it's going to have its hydrogen-fueled passenger planes in service by 2035. I mean, is that something that entrepreneurs should be taking stock of? Is it something that is a long-term pipe dream, or does that long-term perspective in terms of the future of hydrogen and where we may be, does that afford investors as well as entrepreneurs opportunities? So, Antoine, I'll come to you on that one.
Yeah, I was quite pleased to hear that, because my sense was that in the last few years, I felt the aviation industry was following more an incremental path of decarbonization, and there was not really anything in the landscape that was getting them really where we need to go, which is neutrality. So I'm quite happy that they made these amendments. I think, though, that when I discuss with specialists from this industry, that's pretty challenging. You need to solve liquid hydrogen storage, slushing, pumping, vaporization issues. That's quite a lot of things to solve. And the fact that they announced it quite formally with a deadline, which is, it looks far, but it's quite challenging. It means I think they are really going to be committed to it. I don't think they will be. They will afford to do this bet in addition to others. I think they will go full speed on that. So now for entrepreneurs, I'm not really a specialist of startups in the aviation industry. I don't know. There are probably room for startups in this space, but obviously they have to live with big tier ones and big OEMs like Airbus and Boeing. So it's. I will be quite intrigued to see how this kind of announcement motivates entrepreneurs to get there. So I think we'll follow that. Yeah.
Sure. Amir, do you have anything to add? I mean, have you been keeping your eyes on what's happening in the aviation industry with hydrogen? I mean, is that going to be one part of the scaling that we need for hydrogen going forward?
I do think that there's a natural fit there from a technology perspective that makes sense. My worry about the airline business is that the whole industry is has been pushed back by probably at least 5 years with just what's happening with COVID. So I just don't know whether the companies, at least in the US side, you're seeing the main makers like Boeing and the whole, people are suffering so badly that the last thing in their mind is it's in a survival mode. So I don't know how long this lasts and whether the capital that is drying up and is scarce, a lot of the government support, will that be coming with strings attached? The type of research and development and commitment that is needed to completely new approaches. It's sort of like something out of left field that has come in and has messed up. So I worry whether the timeline on this is meetable. 2035 is a very, very near-term goal, and this thing could probably take longer. But there is a natural fit. Eventually, I think there'll be something there.
Sure. And I suppose then within that discussion is that hydrogen through synthetic or e-fuels is far more developed than hydrogen combustion. I mean, Ivan, to come to you on this point, do you think there more could be done by investors, entrepreneurs to sort of further that journey path, or is these things just take a long time to develop and are natural constraints on the development of hydrogen in this sense?
No, and I think as the CTO on the panel here pointed out, I think hydrogen combustion comes with a lot of technical difficulties that I am not the right person to address. But I think hydrogen's role in synthetic fuels